All we know is their goal is to reduce you in wealth that makes you completely subservient to state. We need to prepare. This is a serious threat. And your children need to understand the way of the world. And you need to give them an opportunity to grow up outside of the Western world and educate them. And we've got a much bigger job than we realize. But you were born for these times. You chose it. Spiritually, people say you select your parents. You're born for this inning. And you can just stand on principle and be someone honorable. But I'm telling you, truth is a revolutionary act.
Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN.
When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes a duty. So said Thomas Jefferson. Go to bit.ly/lawful tax protest or bit.ly/make war history and find out why it is a criminal offence to pay central government or local government taxes in the UK. bit.ly/lawful tax protest or bit.ly/make war history. And let's make war history. Hey Francis, thank you so much for making yourself available. It's been a while trying to arrange this.
It has.
It has indeed. We both have a mutual friend who facilitated this. Really appreciate it. This is Thursday, the 18th of September. It's 5 minutes to 5 UK time when we're recording this. And you just want to start a little bit of intro about yourself. Not too much, because I'm interested more what you have to say about what's going on than in you per se.
Yeah, so I bring together sort of three circles in our brand. One is the Market Sniper, which is a technical analysis methodology that allows people to make asymmetric gains to very tight risk. And that's only at unique moments where you get a particular setup, and that's known as the HVF method of trading, which is basically a volatility constriction. When you get the volatility going very, very low, you often get a substantial explosive move. It's a bit like the tide, it comes in and goes out, the volatility, but once it goes out, it returns with a bang. So it kind of comes in slowly, but returns with a bang. So it's slightly different price behavior in terms of how it works. And that's the Market Sniper, which is my primary YouTube channel, where we tend to talk about charts. And it's more about, we don't believe what they say, let's see what they do. And it's a tracker. It's a bushman of reading the footprints in the sand. That's charting for us. And it's put us in a position that we called the Euro-Swiss franc collapse before anyone had heard of the Greek crisis or the pigs. It's had us called single-digit oil before anyone had heard of COVID. And it was in $67 and hadn't been single digits for 35 years. It's called, shorting also shipping, Carnival, cruise liner companies in the same event. Very big long upside targets on gold, a number of them. So the methodology is very robust, particularly on the higher time frames. That's the Market Sniper. The Crypto Sniper is the awareness that crypto, and you are crypto rich as well, this is coming for a role and a purpose. So we apply HVF method, but we utilize it as trading and to some degree investing. But there's certain parts of it in terms of where it's taking us we don't buy into fully, and that's the digitization of our existence. And that brings me to the Reset Sniper, which is the third circle in our brand, which is that the world is being engineered into a certain direction by a lot of forces that have got an immense amount of control in just about all the nations of the world, and are progress, in the name of progress, taking us in a certain place, which I don't believe serves us as the average man in the street, versus this elitist, totalitarian, Bolshevik Marxism through technology and corporate fascist companies that are conspiring against us. So I live in the virtual middle point of all three of those circles. I'm the bastard love child of those three themes, and so you can take it from there in any direction you want.
It's like a Venn diagram, right? There you are, yes, where these three overlap, right?
That's it.
I didn't know about the Reset Sniper. I've heard about the others, and I'll have all the links in the description below so people can go check out France's amazing analysis and perhaps use his service if that's your bag. Now, we were going to start off with the Fed, but I have to ask you something else beforehand, right? I'm in the UK, and I said to a friend a few weeks ago that I'm 51% that the pound is going to crash before the euro does. But it really is it's a really close run thing. And before we go on to the Fed and the cutting of the interest rates yesterday, how do you see the situation in the UK and Europe playing out?
Both very bad. But the one who falls actually hardest and furthest, and this is the one that there's the most disbelief about, is America, because America's always, we've had it ingrained, America sneezes, Europe catches a cold, the rest of the world catches a cold. We're all so frail and weak, and it is the demigod of power and dominance. And what many people don't realize is that America's run out of rope. Its debt market's turned. You asked about currencies, but just while we're on this chart that I'd prepared, they cut rates yesterday, as you probably know.
Yes.
And the US 10-year bond, which is basically them needing money and selling a debt instrument that you buy, and you get paid an interest rate, and then you get your money back at the end of the term. So the 10-year, you get back the capital in 10 years, and you receive in the meantime an interest paid to you. That has gone up. So the big argument we make is that there's too much debt around. When the debt interest rates go up, that means the value has gone down. You have to visualize a seesaw. Yeah. So that means valuation down, interest rate up. People want a higher yield. They want to buy at a lower price that infers a higher yield, because the return is actually fixed. But if you buy it cheaper, then the actual return to how much you paid means the yield has gone up. And despite rate cuts, the long end of the bond market, the 10-year and other durations, which are even longer still, there's a 30-year, for example, there's a 20-year. If we have a look at this as well, what we'll probably see is very much similar. So, okay, you made your big hype about your economy is now weak. We've been saying the American economy is far weaker than they tell you. So they've been feigning strength and acting strong based on a lie, which is the labor. They actually met a recession criteria under Biden and Yellen.
Hold on a second, please, Francis. No, I did tell you beforehand, my training is in social work, and I'm going to tell you something, and you're not allowed to try and make it clearer for me, because it's a hopeless task. I still don't understand bonds, right?
Yes.
I've got, the yield goes up when the value goes down. Don't try and explain it to me, please. Please don't, right?
Well, it's worth you understanding it, and I will try. Just very.
Oh, no. Here's what I can see, right? Here's what I do get. If interest rates are going up, it's because lenders don't think that it's a safe bet. It's a riskier bet. So, but if the Fed lowered interest rates yesterday, looking from that chart, it looks like they've gone up anyway.
Well, recently they have come down coming into the news. So there is a little bit of the sell on the rumor and buy back on the fact. So the markets try to price things in ahead of schedule.
Right.
And there's the cut probably came in the markets before the confirmed announcement of the cut, because it was largely 96% that it was going to be there at a quarter cut. There was even a possibility of a double cut, which didn't happen. So you are getting a bit of rebound. I don't want to make too much of it, but the point being, we're at very high rates since COVID, which is when they created so much fear and crashed so many markets that the only market left to run into, which was the safe haven, was the bonds markets, and yields were right down here. So there you see March 2020, yields very low. Everyone didn't care that they're getting no yield. They were buying and bidding more and paying more to get that lower yield, just because it meant they didn't lose money. Because the stock market crashed, Bitcoin crashed to 4K. Everything crashed because it was all fear. Everyone needed money, and the safe haven was debt. And they've successfully positioned it that. However, since then, this is the key point we make, this trend turned. And I will show you on a bigger time frame in a minute, but you have pullbacks, you have upside moves. So what is actually happening is the bond market is losing value. When the rates go up, it's losing value. Yeah. And the cost of borrowing is going up too, because banks don't want to initiate debt instruments. If you borrow to buy a house, a bank has created a debt instrument, and it's the owner of it, and you become their assets, or the property does. And you have a liability. And this debt creation. And if you are more likely to fail and have a difficult job environment in a difficult economy and fail to make your payments, and the property prices are going to collapse because lots of others are in the same situation as you, the bank is less willing, and the price of the money goes up, and the perceived value of the debt instrument goes down. That's probably enough for your bond explanation. But just to warn you, we had a 40-year bull period, which started after Volcker, and this bull period is this long sustained period of going down in interest rates, where debt instruments were very good things, and they were creating lots of liquidity, and we had a dot-com boom, we had a housing boom, etc., etc. Now, this trend reversed. This is why 2020 was such a seminal event, because debt instruments, the ability for America to use its bottomless overdraft, ended. No more bottomless overdraft. You can't just spend. And that's why they want to reduce their spending in NATO, which affects Europe. That's why Europe is now having to go and start investing in its own military. That's why Trump was trying to get peace in Ukraine. They don't want to give money there anymore. That's why tariffs, because he's trying to get tax income, and he's actually taxing his own people. So when you tariff an imported good, it's your local business or individual that's buying that imported good that pays the tariff. So it's a tax on his own citizens, but no one sold it as that. They sold it as, yay, MAGA, fighting back against the cheap dumping of product in your nation. And it's not like that at all. It isn't like that at all. Tariffs are anti-competitive. People say they do it to protect their industries. They do it to stop people from importing. So what actually happens is Americans no longer want to import. They try by maybe lesser substitutes that are available locally. And in some instances, there might not be substitutes at all. And they have to eat the fee.
Okay.
And so there's quite a bit in that. Yeah, unpack wherever you like.
Yes, no, thank you. I don't know if we got enough time right today, but my understanding from people like Tom Luongo, from Promethean Action, from Alex Craner, whom I speak to regularly, is that what Trump is out to do, and he said that he mentioned him in his presidential campaign about McKinder. Sorry, not McKinder, McKinley. He wants to reintroduce the American system of political economy as espoused by Madison, Abraham Lincoln, McKinley, where the US had so much money from tariffs, they didn't have taxes, that McKinley didn't know how to spend. They didn't know where to spend the money.
No, not going to happen. And I'm sorry if those people are leading you to believe that it will. And there's no way that succeeds. So you have to remember, in the very old days, there was no tax initially at all until the Federal Reserve came in. In terms of income tax. There were other taxes, some as what you've mentioned. So that's when tariffs ended and you imported and exported, and the governments ran off that. Once they introduced an income tax, there's no way they will eliminate an income tax. They don't get enough money in, and the tax on individuals is very, very high. In fact, you'll be shocked how low what they get from corporations, particularly when you bear Apple and all the others. Tax incomes, US. I'm hoping I'll get this diagram. I saw it not so long ago. And it's absolutely, let's see, diagram. So here's America's incomes. Individual income taxes is the biggest. They tax the individual very hard. So this notion that they're going to raise tariffs and replace that 137 billion, it's not happening. Also, out of my reset circle, so I'm talking to you about macroeconomics and I'm just making a statement that's mathematical, they would lose 137 billion if they went low taxes and just went tariffs. Their current exercise taxes, maybe some custom duties, let's say we count all of those together, that's 7 and 8 billion. It's 15 billion. You need 100x that to cancel income tax. And that's what existed, McKinley, Lincoln and all of that, before the income tax on citizens. And this notion that he's altruistic and doing this and that he's a good guy and he's balancing the books is foolhardy. It is foolhardy. Trump is not your friend in America. And let's just go over this last 30 days. 30 billion came in through tariffs, but in actual fact, he used to get 7 billion anyway before he brought in his policy. So America used to get 7. So you got a net 23 billion. Okay. In that same month, you borrowed 550 billion. So $23 versus $550. That's 4%, 4.1%. By the way, he's destroyed the soybean farmers because China did reciprocal tariffs on soybean and has stopped buying American soybeans. So the farmers are now going bust, and he's committed 16 billion to bail out a farming industry in the soya market. So that 23 net that you got, 2/3 of it now needs to go, more than 2/3, now needs to go to just a single line item product and industry. Never mind all the other industries that are suffering now, that are no longer selling out and getting exported to China or other nations in terms of trade. By the way, that further worsens the trade deficit, that China doesn't actually buy something with the dollars, because most of what goes on is America is buying Chinese gear. Walmart is built on Chinese supply chains. So you're sitting in a mathematical world where Tom, Alex, whether they support this, are delusional. The tariff, there's no getting to tariffs replacing income tax. There's no fixing the fact that you have a 380 billion deficit here. That is absolutely huge. Your outlays are 687 and you are not covering with receipts half. You're not even covering half. Think about it logically as a social worker and you're counseling a family that is in debt. And the guy earns £50,000 in the UK.
That's very clear.
Has tax to pay and is spending £100,000, and it's all going out T-bills, credit instruments on credit cards, where it goes, yeah, we'll pay you interest, put it out. And he is every year that £50,000 that he isn't earning, he's putting out on personal loans and credit cards. How long sustainable? In fact, it's a miracle it's been sustained this long, and that was probably because of the military, which is a line item that is now smaller than the interest bill. Now, this is an old one. This is August 24. The net interest on the debt at 80 billion is past health and is past the national defense. It's climbing and getting worse. So this is just the financials that those guys should have done with you to say, there's no tariff home run holy grail. And the more you put tariffs, the more Americans will not buy and the less tariffs you get. It's a bit like, why don't we have 100% or 95% tax in the UK? Everyone will stop working. Everyone will stop working and going on welfare. You can't run a nation like that. So there's only a certain degree that tariffs work, and the minute they become obstructive by pricing, people find other supply chains. China will buy Brazilian soy. Simple as that. One of the BRICS, hey, we're happy to have you as a major buyer. Come on board. You don't have a unique product in soybeans, I'm afraid. You know, ground and farming can be done in many, many places. So when you look at the financials of this, there is no rescuing this situation. It is a mathematical failure. The hegemon is going to fail. You have already seen it in the debt markets that we called those interest rates going from 0.3 when we were showing you the chart. Back here, if I wipe my face again, this is a violent turn in the debt markets, which is the way that America had funded all her excess spending. Hey, we'll borrow. And someone will buy that instrument and give us the money when we borrow, and we'll pay them an interest. Well, China ain't buying anymore. And in fact, they're doing the anti-dollar trade. And the greatest anti-dollar trade is to buy gold and sell dollars and to disperse your treasuries. So the problem America has is nobody wants to buy their debt anymore, which means interest rates are going to go higher. And this is what you're having here. Interest rates are going to go higher. But as you'll see, it's not straight line up. It's not just that. It's going higher, lower, etc. Now, when we talk of recession, we come off a little bit. Everyone going, no, and you see people still want to buy bonds. No, there's a little bit of money going into the bond markets that's brought the values up and the rates tiny bit down, because you've literally declared a recession and admitted to 3 years worth of lying on your employment numbers. So around about 3 years ago, or 2.5, call me a liar for the time frame, Yellen and Biden, that's the Treasury of America, and Biden, the then president, had a recession. That meant that you had 2 contractions of GDP in a quarter, twice in a row. That's a technical recession. They reframed it, and Yellen came out and said, no, this can't be, and it isn't a recession. No one's to refer to it as a recession. Because we've got a red-hot labor market, they said. What they were doing is they were hiring government workers at a rapid rate, DEI consultants, all the inversion, perversion stuff, transgender consultants, etc., all forms of this narrative, and they were paying a lot of money to companies that only earned from the state. In other words, a private company, but without government expenditure, to have zero revenue. So they created these concerns that kept getting larger. So they continued to excessively borrow to fund these agendas. So that just further puts more stuff on the credit card, and it created a fake employment impression. And then there was the statistical lie, where they kept revising the number down. Monthly they would revise it down, monthly they would revise it down, then they'd come the end of the year, there would be a second revision, a second down, and recently they've just done quite an extended period back, and they took another 911,000 jobs that they claimed had been created, because they have a statistical anomaly that's called the birth-death model. If you and I open a company, we want to start a hedge fund trading account, they assume a secretary, a janitor, and a various number of employees could be employed. It's a complete fraud. Many people have special purpose vehicles that don't involve anyone but the directors. So there's all forms of ways they cheat and they lie, and they've actually fessed up. We were saying it's a lie. You're in a recession long time ago in America. 2 years while they were acting strong. We were saying it's a lie, and now they've fessed up because it serves them to have a recession. They need the slightly lower interest rate with all the 9 trillion they still have to roll, or part of which they might have rolled this year so far. I don't know how much is left that they have to roll. So what happens with those debt instruments? They don't have the money. They push it out again. So taking you back to social welfare, your bankruptcy clients, when they have to pay the credit card balance in full, instead of paying it off in full, they find a new credit card and put it out with them, and then pay that credit card from the other one and put it out. And so they keep rolling like this and going round, and every time they need more credit cards. The US is a Ponzi scheme needing more buyers for its debt, and there's less people interested in it because the central banks have changed. A key other tweet to show you is that central banks are now deeply buried into gold, and that treasuries, US treasuries, are no longer the highest US treasuries. But you want to see this, gold holdings, central banks. So if I find this chart for you, you will see that actually the major nations of the world are now no longer prepared to, here's the image, hold treasuries. So the blue line is American debt, treasury instrument. So that means I own the debt that you borrowed, and you pay the interest to me, and at the end of the term you pay me back in full. Okay. Or you go get someone else to borrow to, and you bring me their money to pay me in full in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever the case may be. And what this chart is actually showing you, that gold got demonetized during the everything bubble, during the 60s, 70s, and into post 80s, when it was at its highs, but very specifically more in the 80s, 90s to 2000. Gold was at its all-time low price at 2000. That's when Gordon Brown allowed, I suspect, one of the members of the Rothschild family to take all Britain's gold at $253, knowing what they were going to do. So I don't think any gold left Britain. Brown just was selling the family silver that you, the taxpayer, own, and it's one of your assets. So 400 tons of gold during this period were sold, but they never left. That means somebody who knew that the post-dot-com boom was the bottom for gold was now picking up a real cheap. This is what they do. They buy you out on the cheap. They create pumps and dumps. They get you chasing into the pumps. Everyone rushing into buy-to-lets at one point. Now they don't allow it anymore. They want big landlords. And they bring the dumps and they blood in the street. You carry the debt. You are a debt slave, and you are impoverished. Your wealth is spoiled. That's how they can control you. Then you take your shot, you take your social score, you take everything they want you to take, because you won't get your UBI credit if you don't bark and jump when they say jump, and get injected with mRNA when they say you want to get injected with mRNA. So the key thing here is a vote of less confidence now in treasuries declining. They are both losing value, and this is quite parabolic on gold. This gets a lot bigger. We are going to do 80s plus in terms of this, and the crash of the debt, remember money is borrowed into existence, is also a crash of the dollar. So you don't get treasury rebasement, and as I will highlight, it lost 55% without subsequently getting the fiat debasement, because it's borrowed into existence. It's like Siamese twins. You can't drown one half of the Siamese twin where they're attached at the head. You know, you drown them both. So we are seeing a sustained period of weakness in the dollar. A, because they run too big a deficits with other nations and they're not buying their treasuries anymore. That used to be the trade. The fat American on the lounger, burgers, cokes, beers, please, Japanese man, Chinese man, French man, European man, put it on my tab, IOU, yes, sign, paper. Carry on like that for a while, for a 2-week holiday, yes. For a 6-month stay at a hotel, the manager's going to pull you long before then and say, Tom, we got a bit of a down payment on all those IOUs and signing on the room story. That's what America's done. Nobody wants the IOU anymore.
Okay.
And in fact, they're dumping the IOU for gold, and that's what that chart shows you.
Okay. Now, thank you for that. But what about these stable coins from the Genius Act that's going to allow people I mean, essentially, they're using them as a cover for US Treasuries because they'll be backed by US Treasuries, and then people all over the world will be able to transact with USDT or USDC. You know, say people in Africa will have access to dollars, and then that way they're exporting. Not that I necessarily approve of this, Francis. They're exporting their debt through another avenue.
So here's the big catch with everybody. It's a masterful trick. Trump's got a plan. Percentage buying of treasuries through stable coins. So it is true that they started having treasuries. Well, let's just go USDT. Maybe more clear. USDT Tether versus others. Let's just see. I will get the chart that I am looking for here as well. So, by the way, so Tether, which is the primary stable coin, holds 106 billion of US treasuries. Now, you think that's a big number. What did I tell you got issued in 30 days, just the last 30 days? 550 in 1 month. So just to 2 months of that, do the maths with me. I know you're a social worker, but you got this. 1.1 trillion, and then add another 550, 1.650 trillion. In a quarter, at that rate, you've done 1.65 trillion, which is 1,650 billion.
Yeah.
3 months of a year. All that Tether holds right now, the whole shooting match of own treasuries, 106. So just to be accurate on the maths, a single quarter of American borrowing at current rates, 1,650 billion. Just lose the billions. Bought by USDT, since it's been buying, and I can tell you that since 2020, that's 5 years worth of accumulation. Yeah. So we divide, in fact, we divide by 106. I need to invert this. Let's see if it'll allow me. No, so I'll do it again. 106 divide 1,650. That is the contribution from Tether.
Right.
0.06.
6%.
6% of 1 quarter. What they've done in 5 years will cover 6% of 1 quarter. This is as much hopium as the tariffs narrative you were sold. And that's why I'm here to debunk the guys that tell you funny stories. You would need so much of a pump, and hey, I'm happy to be in crypto and have that pump, to be issuing 550 billion every month in Tether. That's all racing into crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum, all of them. Those market caps would be absolutely singing. Every major token would start to approach a market cap well past Apple and Nvidia. They'd need to be somewhere in between those and gold, which is at about 25 trillion. You know, you're talking about them becoming 11 trillion, 15 trillion to even start absorbing that amount of money. So the other thing that the treasury guys at USDT also said, that maybe Tom and Alex and anyone else who's been giving you the narratives about this masterful plan that's going to suddenly whisper away 60, 70 years of massive debt accumulation, is that the same Tether that is clearly saw, they pivoted. They were being chased by the SEC. Bitfinex and Tether were being chased by the SEC in the years leading up to 2020. And once they agreed to buy treasuries, the pressure ended. So that was a deal. It was a deal. And they aren't only buying treasuries. It's not the only collateral. That treasuries, just let's see how their acumen, and I laughed at the time. I said, can you believe it? The treasuries they're choosing to buy treasuries at the top of the bond market, because we called the top of this bond market. So what are you looking at here as a chart? Everything I tell you is justified and shown with data and a chart. That is March 2020. This is the value of the bonds now, not the interest rate, the value. This is an ETF of long term. It's made up of 20-year and 30-year debt instruments. We shorted this instrument on a head and shoulder there, and even earlier over there. We were the earliest callers. At that point that you were at the top peak bonds, Bitfinex started to be a buyer. Do you know that Bitfinex will now be sitting on those treasuries on at least 50% loss?
Wow.
So the collateral that they have from that period, if I take you from the top roughly down to where we are right now at the toes, 50.32, that is capital loss. That means you come to me for a loan and your house is worth £500,000 and I give you a loan for £500,000. Property prices crash and it's now worth 280 because the interest rates have gone up. I want my money back. You can't pay because it's a recession. I'm in trouble. I'm out of. When I seize your home and sell it in the marketplace, plus costs, I'm lucky if I get 250 out and I'm down 250 billion. It's not backed when it's backed by treasuries that perform like that.
Right.
They are talking of buying gold miners and silver miners as well as the precious metal to make up for the fact that the collateral they chose that got the bloody cops off their back, the Securities and Exchange Police off their back, is made them a bag holder. The worst investment. If they were a hedge fund, they would have been fired and closed. Because you've gone in, since 2020 to today, you're down 50% at its current point from the high of March 2020. And let's say they started and they were accumulating, they didn't accumulate all of it at the very top. They would have drip fed in. They didn't shoot up to 160 billion in one hit, but they would have been buying all the way down. So 50% is an exaggeration, but but if they bought all the way down, they would probably safely be sitting on 30% losses at these lows right now, 25 to 30%, depending on the weighting. If they had become more aggressive buyers later when it already crashed a lot, maybe not. That's why they want some real collateral. That's why they're suddenly discovering real money. So that's the story on Tether saving America. 106 billion bought since 5 years. Yeah,
Okay.
since they decided in 2020. And each year, that budget that I showed you on the tweet, you're clocking up 380 plus billion. It's a non-starter. This is like, you know, me pissing into a hurricane. It's a non-starter. It's just you're not sending it back on its way for all the love in China. It is a mathematical impossibility that the United States, and this is something, as I say, we used to interview Tom, but there's like certain things that I just can't reconcile, that he doesn't get. US falls hardest as a hegemon. It falls from the highest ladder far harder. And it is the most indebted. Go to Grok, go to any AI. If you take the unfunded liabilities of the United States and the unfunded liabilities of Japan, and you add them into their debt GDP, you know, Japan goes to about 330%. America is on its most conservative measure, 450% and up to 600% with welfare Medicaid. Everybody gives you this cope, but Japan has more debt to GDP. Japan's more honest about its debt. It owns its own assets. It's not relying on foreign intervention, and it has a demographic very hell-bent on saving. It has a terrible demographic for kids and birthing and a lot of pensioners, but it's a self-contained Ponzi in that they have invested in their own bonds. America has a far higher percentage to a much larger GDP, which makes the number astronomical, and is reliant on foreign nations to be buyers of its debt instruments, which are no longer happening. Unless, as you will sometimes hear, let's get this up as well in a diagram for you, because these are the facts. You believe the United Kingdom, a debt-based crash of its own, a slave nation or a boss nation, depending how you want to frame it, over America, Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, and Belgium are the buyers that are the proxies that keep the Ponzi going for America, which is American influence offshore coming in looking like foreign buying. That's how you should frame that. So if we look at who's the buyers chart of treasuries, and we want foreign nations. I've got a chart in mind here as well. Foreign buyers chart. America is entirely reliant. Over 30% is foreign owned, and most of them are not doing it. Most of them don't want to buy anymore. The biggest growers, that's not the chart I was looking for, neither is that. It had all the major nations. So let me improve my search. Foreign national buyers chart of treasuries. I might not get the exact one I want, but the interesting point is that the United Kingdom is the fastest grower and is now second. It used to be Saudi. Saudi's been getting out. China's not buying anymore. and it's losing value, and they're distributing some of it. What are they doing? They're buying gold like they've never bought gold before. The amount of gold that must be going through that country's borders is extreme. Undeclared, declared to them, but not officially internationally declared. It won't shock me if they have 50,000 tons or even 100 at some point, but certainly north of 30.
That's sensible. What the Chinese are doing and what the Saudis are doing by divesting themselves of treasury seems sensible. Why is Britain buying?
Well, they have a debt problem of their own. And why, when you have a debt problem, and you come to the only conclusion, remember the three circles I talk about. Market Sniper is the chart and the method. I've shown you charts. We haven't done patterns and specific things, but you've got a little bit of charting in there. The Crypto Sniper is the treasury discussion. The Reset Sniper is a slave nation Western collapse that is going to go down with America. The Pharaoh is going to be buried with his slaves. And they are maintaining the Ponzi until they're ready for their gematria special date that they're going to do the all fall down on you, which could be not very far away because France is unraveling. By the way, the European Union that has France unraveling gave a 500 billion euro loan to South Africa. You know, why are they even doing for green, for, you know, environmental energy things? That's Europe right now. Throwing money out there with a country with a debt-based collapse inside their own borders, France. Never mind the southern Mediterranean that are literally don't have real government. They just have rubber stampers. You have a prime minister, you have whatever, but if they don't like the cut of your jib, you're out. Do you remember Varoufakis? Yeah. No, he wanted too much to end the austerity for Greeks. Well, he didn't last long in politics. He was voted in by his own people. Well, no, they stepped right in there and said, buddy boy, this is how it works. When you're relying on our wallet and we're paying the piper, you dance to our tune. And you're not dancing good. So, bye, we found somebody else who'll jump a little higher exactly when we say it. So, this is the world. You have to see the illusion of democracy that you've been sold is a complete fucking lie on so many levels. And there is already a new world order in place in some senses. And they are now grabbing tighter. The Python's got his loops around us. Now comes the constriction. And this is a dark story and it's a grim one, but there's opportunities that people can take, which is what our entire business is about. We've predicted this reset from the 80s. I saw a debt-based reset come, and we called the technical turn in the bond market the only one in 2020. Last year, November 24, Stanley Druckenmiller and Paul Tudor Jones, Americans, hedge funds, money managers inside America are shorting their own country's debt to make profits for their home offices and their own personal funds. They're 3 years later than us, but they've got more leverage and bigger money, and that's when people started listening. Nobody listened to us when we said the debt market turned in 2020. Very few people took us seriously in 2021. Some people said he's still banging on about it in 2022. Then some shoes started to drop. Then lots of things started to get expensive. Then rates started to climb. And people say, I wonder if this is permanent. Then they heard Stanley Druckenmiller was doing it in 2024. They go, oh, now we believe. Now we believe. That's it. It's just about name and scale. But we were first and we called it. And it's definitely never coming back. You don't bring that bond market back, because it's a parabola and the interest rate is too expensive, and now they're borrowing to pay the interest rate, not the capital. Tell me, how would you counsel your social welfare story that I've given you with a bankrupt husband with income half his outgoings and a wife that doesn't earn and kids and family, that they're living a life of Riley on credit, and that they're putting new credit to pay the interest on old credit on new credit cards? How would you counsel them? Well, would you be buying stories about they've got this clever little business they're going to start and they're going to tariff people, and there's this amazing voodoo coin that they're going to do, and that you need treasure, you need
that's a voodoo coin maybe.
Yeah.
On Solana.
You're not doing it. You're not saving this. This is a massive globalized. There's no IMF for the scale of this. This is the entire Western world. They are going to bring a crisis on you, and it's all going to be about the financial debt crash. And don't be sidebarred, oh, it's divorce and it's this. The other thing Tom says, it's about divorce. 24% of attendees are the highest number are Americans in divorce. Okay, so he's actually self-reflecting. He's kind of like, we're America good, there's this old legacy, old Europe money. Divorce is primarily the biggest attendee by percentage. Again, just pop it into Grok. Break down the percentages. You know, there's so much to debunk sometimes with what happens. What are the national percentages for their tendencies in divorce. Yeah, percentages for divorce attendance in percentage bullet format. Let's see. Let's see. I mean, we're doing this together. You can conduct this for yourself and check. United States 22.5, United Kingdom 9%, Switzerland 5.3, Germany 4.6, India 4.4. The biggest. So if you aren't blaming Europe when you blame divorce, you're blaming Bill Gates and Larry Ellison that are attending bloody divorce that live in your country.
Yeah.
Get it right. Check your facts. Come on. It's easy to do. You know?
Francis.
I'm not talking like that to you. I'm just saying.
No, I get it. I get it. And then I suppose my the way that I interview people, I'm interested and curious in all sorts of interpretations. So I'm not necessarily going to challenge what you're saying. I'm just curious, because one of the things that I do bringing it to social work is I look at an issue, what's going on in the household, from all sorts of angles, lots and lots of different angles, and then see how it plays out. So then bringing it back to this, so the only way out really is default, and then they got to drive us to war before as a cover for the default, and as a cover for bringing in biometric digital IDs, CBDCs, low traffic networks, UBI, and then we'll all eat bugs and be happy, and we'll eat Bill Gates's fake butter and save the planet that way.
And I'm afraid all the conspiracy theorists were right on all of that.
Conspiracy prophets, Francis.
Prophets, analysts, yeah.
Conspiracy prophets.
Analysts are accurate about the trend, and they've told us in lockstep, Rockefeller, all of these documents. So this is where they go. And when you find out who these people are, those are the ones that some of these people are more scared and afraid of mentioning, because, you know, they're in fear of them. And they misdirect it to old Europe or whatever the case. Yes, there's old families in Europe. Who are those old families? Are they really Englishmen? Where did they come from? What is their common thread? You know, and that's when you start getting into the brass tacks. But generally, as a social worker in your position, let me just say, you're going to have a huge amount of work. And here's a sad prediction. This is catching most people blindsided.
Yep.
And they are going to, the depression is going to go through the roof. Prozac, depression drugs. I fear suicide, particularly for males that are breadwinners, that lose jobs after jobs. We're going to have culling environments. If you've relied on corporate employment, you're going to have real problems, because there's going to be a right sizing of business across the board. Governments are going to go into what I call scavenge tax mode. I call it scat because it's shit and it's perverse. And they are essentially going to be coming for tax every way they can. You have to understand.
That's happening in the UK.
Very much in UK, but very much in the US too. And tariffs is the start. It was the softly that he makes it look like he's fighting for you against other current countries. No, he's not. He's just destroyed his soybean farms, and he's levied a tax on people that assemble things for which European and Chinese parts are required, that have now gone up in cost, which is absolutely going to be inflationary. It's absolutely going to push up the cost. They won't be talking about it now because they're now talking the recession and the fake employment numbers, but you have both the recessionary vibe and inflationary vibe coexisting. The cost of living in America has gone up immensely. I mean, I've got plenty of examples of goods, exact items, you know, boneless New York strip meat, 16 months ago, $10.99, today, $15.99. The Walmart checkout girl who put the exact same checkout items in her basket that she did 3-5 years ago, and the different percentages. Well, the 5-year one is 134% up. That's 2.3 times. That means whatever you spent $100 on getting, or if you're talking about a monthly shop, $300, now costs more than $660 plus dollars. I mean, that is unbelievable. So
go to the tax scavenging, please. Say more about and how it's going to roll out.
On the tax, so they're going to bring in more means to tax. So before I explain that, one step before that, why? They were taxing you, but they were taxing you by sleight of hand, and it was inflation. How do they do that? They get a certain amount of income and they spend more, and that goes out on debt. That is creation of new money. So it's dilution. You understand the principle of dilution. If you and I are business partners and we have 50 shares each, and then I, on the sly, go to the accountants and get another 200 shares issued, and I keep them, you still haven't, no one's done anything to you per se, but you've been diluted in the company, because now I am 300 shares to the good and you are 50. Your slice of the pie was reduced by me expanding it and giving it everywhere else except to your commiserate share thereof. If I issued new 200 shares, I should have given you half of them because you were 50-50, but now you're not. So we're saying with fiat, when they create new money, what they're actually doing is causing a flood of money, and assets go up first. Speculative assets go up first, lots of things. So property.com, stock markets, those go up. Everyone thinks inflation is your bread and your milk at the till. That's the final part of inflation. That's when it starts to hit and bite hard. That's the cost of living. But housing going up is also a cost of living thing. It does have an effect, but it's a speculative asset that has leverage. The usury extractor, the Pharisees of money lending that Jesus overturned the tables, the only time he was violent, have made property unaffordable by creating a leverage pump and then a leverage dump. And BlackRock will be there to buy them all at piss poor cheap prices and turn you into a tenant in your own home. That's the game. This is the ownership. You will own nothing and be happy on the Prozac and the antidepressants we give you until we switch you off with a toxic vaccine or anything else, because you're not particularly useful. There is an overpopulation agenda. This entire climate agenda is actually masquerading on too many people in the planet. We want a more manageable system. You are already in a new world order. That is how they communicate. They don't tell you up front, or it leaks out the sides sometimes if you're paying attention. So we're going to have a massive reduction, particularly in the Western white European. Further to that, you had Deagle Stats that works with the military industrial complex and is a consultant, and many of these are part of masonry groups and everything else. And they forecast the amount of military expenditure a nation will make based on its GDP and its number of population. And they forecast a 66% decline in America to below 100 million. In fact, that's probably more than 66%. They might be at 300, 320. God knows how many people are being counted that are leaking through the borders. And they're going to be 99 million. The UK is the worst, 70% decimation on the Deagle Stats. Why is that happening? What are they going to do? What war will they start? What poison will they put in the water? Who and what is going down? That somebody makes a random forecast like that when dealing with a military industrial complex as to where to sell their arms.
Yeah.
And it's all Western nations. White European, indigenous Western nations are going to be attacked. You can argue America isn't white European, but the Vikings were there probably at the same time as the Red Indians, etc. Have your joy with the politics of that. I'm not trying to make a specific point. Western nations will be cleaned out. Financially, you're going to be forced out at the bottom just to survive. You're going to sell everything just to get by. They're going to problem. Long reaction, waterboard your head under there until you're squeaking and squealing. Then they'll bring you up for air, and then you'll sign anything they put in front of you, which will include UBI and all forms of digital surveillance. And who's winning? There's a two-tier economy in America. You've got this terrible for the average man, and you've got this unbelievable economy of Palantir, Apple, Amazon, huge government contracts. So they borrow, which means they create inflation more than their income. They use that borrowing to hand out huge status contracts to build a surveillance security grid over their citizens. So your tax payments are paying for your future imprisonment through these. Hey, isn't it cool? It's the only way we can progress. We can't progress and cure cancer with non-radiation and chemo and non-pharma solutions, but we can sure progress on weaponizing the military-industrial complex to track and trace you and devices that listen to you and everything else. So these megacorps are corporate fascist entities that are working with state against us. There's 3 people in the room, and you have to work out who the patsy is. You're the patsy, as an American, as a UK. Your government and the corporations they are colluding with are working actively against you and are taxing you and making you pay for your future prison that they intend to put you in terms of freedom of movement. And that's the message. That's the key message. That's why you need to be out of the West. Not that those other things won't exist in other places, but it will be less draconian. There'll be less likelihood of a major genocide. And there is some arbitrage that can still be worked on different legal systems by countries. But in the end, they will control most countries. Larry Finkelstein said recently, I like to speak to the leaders before they become leaders. He's basically the final interview BlackRock chairman, before Starmer got to be prime minister. The final interview before one of his lower level employees, shinbound Jew, Ashkenazi, became president of Mexico, a Roman Catholic country with less than 60,000 Jewish people in it and a population of well over 100 million. This is how they put their agents in power, and they are all over the place and in power. Okay. That is it. That is it. And ADL, APAC are omnipotent in the control they have over the senators in America. That's your capture. And people who don't acknowledge that are sleeping or lying.
Yep. Now, Francis, we only have a few minutes left, right? So what is it that we can do to prevail over what's coming down the pipeline?
You have to be smart in how you resist. What you need is self-reliance. Self-reliance and build community. We specialize in that. You need to build wealth. You're going to need money, and you need to be in the things going up, not going down. Funny enough, when you have great collapse, it's also great opportunity. That's what the Chinese sign, crisis and opportunity. The sign points to the opportunity. Gold is one of them, for example. Miners will be one of them. They can do incredible things. You need to position in the right assets. You actually have to take on risk, but in the right areas with the key trend at your back. We're going to have such a sustained crisis coming down here that it's going to make for a very, very big opportunity on the other side. There's a beautiful geometry to the world. You know, you can't have 6 months of night on the North Pole and not have 6 months of day. And that's what is happening. So that's what you need to do. You need to build wealth. You need to understand how to position and invest for this. Then you need to build self-reliance and optionality for freedom that involves building residencies and right to reside outside of Western nations. All those things will serve you incredibly well, make you much more likely to survive this, not only survive, but thrive and potentially be a wealthier slave on the slave plantation than everybody else who's going to be blindsided by that. Our community specializes in that.
Yeah, that's
the Market Sniper YouTube channel is the start, and there's links to book a call for finding out more about how you can start your journey on all of this.
Right, and that would also go into the Reset Sniper, I take it.
It's all three.
In all of this, right? Okay.
All three. It's what cryptos to hold. It's how to get multiple residencies, bank accounts outside of the Western banking system, where there's quite likely going to be a hack, a Russian hack, a North Korean hack, some BS story sold to you at some point, or an error, or EMT. Who knows what theme? All we know is their goal is to reduce you in wealth that makes you completely subservient to state. These are Bolshevik communists. Go and read the history of Bolshevism and how they went about attacking farmers, the murder and slaughter that they did on the Orthodox Russians, Orthodox Christian Russians. The biggest slaughter ever, probably China second to that, when they introduced the communism there, and the slaughter they brought about, and the society undermining through the opium trade, which is the drug dealers. They are the drug dealers of final resort. And, we need to prepare. This is a serious threat. And your children need to understand the way of the world. And you need to give them an opportunity to grow up outside of the Western world and educate them. And we've got a much bigger job than we realize. But you were born for these times. You chose it. Spiritually, people say you select your parents. You're born for this inning. And you can just stand on principle and be someone honorable. But I'm telling you, truth is a revolutionary act. The kind of conversation I've just had with you, if I put it through the YouTube, same grok, for how many strikes on YouTube, will have all forms of, this is an antiseptic trope, this is a conspiracy theory, this is everything. You'll have a page full this long. We've done it. We've seen it. This is what happens when you want to really help people and tell them the hard truth. This is a cold bucket and ice for everybody watching. But it's also an opportunity to get up and start taking action. Otherwise, you will be depressed and you'll be on their farmers later with everything they've planned. Get strong, get active, get physical. Prepare for PSYOP, a la the CV19 scam, only in different forms and different themes. Their biggest product is fear and debt instruments, and you need to get out of those nations that are peddling it, and you need to get opportunities to coexist with other like-minded people in multiple of other nations. And we have snipers all over, community members all over the world, particularly in Panama, Georgia, South Africa, and other places, Indonesia, Malaysia, all sorts of places which are not directly under the collapse. This is World Trade 11. You're on the 100th floor of a building that's about to implode. It doesn't help to say I'm going rural and getting a gun and a goat, because you're moving from the 100th floor to the 38th floor. You might buy some time, but you end up in the rubble at the bottom. You need a whole new building. You need a whole new building that isn't rigged to explode. And these are. And the UK will follow it very shortly if it doesn't lead. The French won't be far behind. Europe is all out of bounds. Only Eastern Europe maybe would be somewhat safe. And Switzerland out of that. The rest of it's going to be carnage. It's going to be carnage financially, and you will all be thrown into this digital biometric dystopia of totalitarianism brought to you by the Bolsheviks. And that's what you have to fight.
Francis, thank you. I'd like to say on that cheery note, but it, what you're saying and what I say to my friends and family, there's a heavy rain coming. It's raining hard. The rain's going to get heavier. You need to protect yourself against what's coming. And your service provides that. I'll have the links in the description below. Thank you so much for this. And everybody, please share this video far and wide. Go check out Francis on all his social media links and stuff. And go check out his sniper services. This is Crypto Rich and Sniper Francis signing out. All the best. Bye-bye. Boost your testosterone naturally and rev up your engine with Immense Boost. bit.ly/CryptoRichBoost and order your testosterone boost today.